James?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can now. I lost you there for a second.
Oh, okay. So anyway, so I feel very fortunate to have come across your publication, The Divine Providence, and frankly, it is the most concise. It gives the most concise for listeners. It gives the most concise background historically where we came from that I've personally come across. So as I was going through your book and I'm going through various chapters, it not only does it make ends connect like I've never read before or heard before, it really helps me understand the formation not only of the United States but where we are today. And what we're dealing with right now is this universal virus that is forcing people. Well, it's leading them to believe that they're being forced to alter their lifestyles in ways that incredibly infringes on their freedoms and their civil liberties. But anyway, for James, and thank you to Ed Rychkun, who I initially had reached out to and made a connection with. So I want to thank Ed. But James, for listeners, please give a brief introduction of who you are, what you do.
Right, I'm Jim McBride. They call me JT. I've been at this for 45 years. I've been on this mission. I've actually started into the legal end of all of this about 30 years ago. And I've found that some interesting things. I found that actually that the world operates on the story that is told in the Bible. And for me, I was raised Catholic and I rejected the church. And when I found that out, that was some startling news. And I mean, I really had to wrap my mind around that. And it's something that people don't, they really have trouble with that today. But I've done years and years of research, years of legal work, legal research, documents and stuff to prove that that the world, the geopolitical structure of the world is based on the story told in the Bible. And not only that, but the Christ's New Covenant, which is a covenant, is a contract, was written 2,000 years ago, and we find ourselves today at the end of that 2,000-year-old cycle and the beginning of a new. We're finding ourselves at the end of the age of Pisces and moving into the age of Aquarius. And in this shift from one age to another, we're changing the rules of the game, where we learned and grew through lack and want and pain and suffering. We're moving into an age where we're going to learn from abundance and prosperity. We're going to learn our lessons, life lessons, or our soul lessons through love and compassion. And so I've spent 45 years of my life, preparing for this, and much of that the universe sent me through obstacles and adventures that challenged my fear. And challenged fears of all kinds, spiritual, mental, physical, and it put me in positions where to face the government and face the governments and the evils of the world. And so I was put in that thing. I was prepared for that, and that's what I've done for many years. As I've stood in the face of evil and I've looked the devil in the eye and exposed that. And I see today's there's so much chaos and insanity in the world, and for some it's very, very scary. But for me, it's very, very exciting, because in this chaos, we know that chaos precedes change. And this, what I'm seeing in the world, is we're changing from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. And this is a very, very radical change. It's almost a 180-degree change in the way we think, believe, and act. And so there is automatically this chaos. And so that's what I've been involved in for the most part of my life, and very, very extensively in the last 10 or 15 years. And I'm seeing things today that this transition is happening. We've so many of us have for years, for a lot of our lives, we've believed, okay, we were working for this ascension, that the humankind was ascending. And that is true. We've been raising our vibration in preparation for this shift. But there's so much fear. Nobody knows what to believe, what to think, who to believe, or who to trust. And that's all part of the issue, or part of the plan. is to challenge everybody's beliefs about everything, because everything we know is a lie and an illusion. So we're being awakened through all this chaos and this insanity, and awakened to see who we are and where we're going. For me, it's a very, very exciting time in the world, because this stuff is actually now manifesting on Earth. This ascension process, the raising of our vibration as a collective, is now beginning to manifest a real heaven on Earth. And I understand it doesn't look like heaven yet, but when you see what's going on and you know what's going on in the background, it is awesome. What's being prepared and what's coming to light right now is very, very exciting. So,
is there a conventional power shift from that in part of that transition?
absolutely, absolutely, it's a 180-degree shift. I can tell you, for 2,000 years, we've been operating. 2,000 years ago, when Jesus gave Peter the keys to the kingdom, he took away our right to rule over our own kingdoms as sovereigns. And we see in America today, in 1933, there was another occupation where they took our property, they put it in trust, and they managed our property. That was another form of occupation. Well, for 2,000 years, the people have been under the rule of something else. And that has been the successor to Peter, and ultimately the Vatican and all the evil that is connected with that. Well, events have changed, where now suddenly, as of last few weeks, that the people's right to rule over their own kingdoms as sovereign has been returned. So yes, there's an absolute shift back from this occupational force that ruled over the people, and back to now the people are regaining our right to sovereignty. But that raises the next question. What the hell is sovereignty, and how do we exercise that? We don't know what sovereignty is for sure, because all we know is what we've been told it is. And ultimately what sovereignty is every man's right to rule over his own kingdom, as long as he harms nobody, and as long as he's a good steward to the land. Okay, but what does that mean, and how do we do that? Does that mean we take back our sovereignty, or that we do this through force? I don't think so. I think it's a matter of expressing our sovereign authority. The way the world is structured today, and there's another key, we have to understand the way the world is structured today. We can stand up as individual sovereign people, and we have protections, all kinds of protections for ourselves, for our property. But we have to stand up and express or exercise that sovereign authority. We know in America today we have two governments. We have the fraudulent, defunct United States, USA Inc., that was operating out of the foreign continent of D.C., and we now have the military, who is actually in charge of the Republic. Today, the Republic does live for the first time in hundreds of years, for almost 200 years. It is actually alive and well today. And the government, or the military, they've done a great deal under Trump, and even after Trump, to clean up this mess and make it possible for the people to reclaim their sovereign authority and reclaim our private property. But they can't do it all for us, because then it would be a military coup. The military they don't operate to have people follow them. They follow the people and the people's will. Well, at the moment, the people's will is willy-nilly. We all sitting around and taking what we get. If the people don't express their sovereign authority, they're basically consenting to whatever they give us. So we're in a very unique position today, in not only in America, but in the world, because now we're in a position where now we can say, how do we express our sovereign authority from here on? What kind of governmental forces do we want in the world? And I think ultimately we need to understand what government is. Government is to govern, to control over. Sovereigns don't have somebody controlling over them. They control over. And I think other than governments, what we need today are service providers. We need a military that's going to protect us. We need a service provider that's going to collect the trash every day and it's going to maintain our roads and our infrastructure. Now, we don't have to give up our sovereign authority to get those things because it's just a private contract. And that's where we're moving back to. So yes, there is a transfer of power back to the people, but only the thing is the people have to stand up and exercise that. And they have to know what it is and how to exercise it. And that's what we do. We go on our websites, theprivatepeople.com and oneglobalestate.com, is we break this down for you. Here's what's really going on. Here's the laws that the military operate under. Here's the law that the occupational forces and the government operate under. And there is a set of laws that they are accountable under. It's just not the ones we use. The military occupation or this occupational force that's ruled over us for all of our lives, they're not liable for the rule. Their rules. They're held liable under another set of rules. Well, when we start using those rules, and we as sovereigns, now we have some leverage, and we can do that without any kind of conflict or violence. We have a court case in New York in the Court of International Trade right now, which is all about this transition. And I am the archivist of the documents that caused all of this transition, because not only are we changing in a physical and spiritual way, but to change the rules of the game called life on earth, we actually had to change the rules and the contracts upon which it was based. So for 2,000 years, we've been operating under Christ's new covenant, but in Christ's new covenant, it tells us how to terminate that contract or that trust at this period of time. And so that's what we've done. That's what's been done. And now we're moving into the age of Aquarius under a new trust, and it's called a celestial trust, that now controls things in a completely different way under the rules and principles of Aquarius. And that is a rule by the people. Everything, all the people are equal, but we all control an equal but undivided portion of a whole. We are the owners or the heirs of the kingdom. And so we all now have control over, or going to be able to say how this is all maintained and managed. So we're moving into a whole new world, and I can tell you we are really into this transition. It's wonderful.
So, James, explain for listeners, what is a straw man?
Well, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on that actually do very little but other than confuse people. It's a lot of the patriot stuff. It's part of the research has been going on through decades. The straw man is it's something that stands in place of another. And what you're talking about is the birth certificate creates what is called a straw man or a CESUQ trust. And that birth certificate represents your divinely granted equal but undivided portion of the whole. And it is that leverage or that property, your portion of the divine estate, which the state is leveraging to create funds, to make money. And it's that thing that they owe you interest on. So in one, some people call it a straw man. It's just simply it's a trust that where the government holds your portion of your divine estate in order to leverage that to create funds.
And how does that relate to this covenant with Christ that you're saying dates back 2,000 years? And then is there relation to that and the Vatican?
Well, yes, actually, the Vatican was, of course, they have been the successor to Peter for 2,000 years until 10 years ago. And how this all relates back is Christ's new covenant says that To terminate the trust, to become the true heir of the kingdom, you must accept and acknowledge. You have to, or you have to, excuse me, you have to accept and surrender, to be sacrificed, to facilitate the merger into the Father's kingdom. Well, all of those terms are trust terms. And it means that it's a specific legal process within trust law, that when you accept and acknowledge and perfect the title on the estate, being the birth certificate, and then you surrender that title for collections, what it does, it effectively kills the public side of that trust, and it moves all that into the private side. So back under the Father's kingdom in original jurisdiction, in equity. It kills off all of the private side. So that's what Christ's new covenant tells us. Jesus told us on the Sermon on the Mount that there were two books, or there were two paths within the book. There was the wide and broad path to destruction, and there was the straight and narrow. And we also see that in the Bible, it said that the Father hates religion, that he despises the holy meetings. So what we see there, or what I take from that, is Jesus says the straight and narrow. If we look at the Bible as just a contract, as a covenant that it says it is, there's the straight and narrow. Okay, and the rest of it is wide, is what they've taken in the Bible and turned into religion. Okay, and we know, I mean, you get very people with little knowledge of the Bible is very easily argue that there was a lot of controversies and contradictions in the Bible. So when you look at Christ's covenant as from the straight and narrow, just as a trust document, and you can see that it spans the 2,000 years of the age of Pisces, and it tells us exactly how to terminate those trusts. So what we do, we've developed a process where you take the birth certificate, that is your estate, that represents your right, title, and interest in the divine estate, your equal and undivided portion of the whole, and we accept and acknowledge that. We perfect title on that, and then we do a surrender for collections. And we surrender that to the commander-in-chief under the laws of belligerent occupation. And what that does, that turns you into an internationally protected person, or a diplomatic person. And we've had this verified by several military personnel, by the Secret Service, the FBI. We've been run around the mill. We've been visited many times, and every single one of us has told us absolutely our paperwork is golden, and you are in fact a diplomatic person. It's quite interesting, and we're beginning to now see the results of where they're going to be transferring credits into our trust for discharge of debt. That's something that came down just last Thursday.
Who is they, James, and where do the credits originate?
Well, these credits are, when you look at the financial system today, you use a double entry bookkeeping. So for every debit, there's a credit. Okay, for every bit of the debt here, there's also an asset or a credit somewhere in the world, sitting in the IMF, in fact. Okay, so there is the positive and the negative side of these accounts that both exist. It's the private side, or the credits over here at the IMF. These are all controlled by Fidelity Investments. Those credits can be moved over into credited to our accounts, or for us to use as discharge. So it'd be Fidelity Investment that got the word that as part of the Celestial Trust, that there'd be funds would be transferred to these accounts. So this is all going to be part of. I believe that the RV is coming here any day. I think that what we're seeing are all the tumblers coming into place to turn the lock, and I believe that's going to happen here very, very shortly. And this is all part of that.
Is there something uh, you're talking about the service that you're offering via your website, and you're free to mention the name of that website again, or you to do so. Is there something outside of what you're doing with that website? Is there something official that's happening? You referred to the Republic being alive and well, yet we're looking at this event that happened in January on the Capitol. We've got D.C., the Capitol building under military lockdown. President Biden, and that's even a controversial election, right? We've got many people saying that was a rigged election. It wasn't a true election. We got him stumbling upstairs yesterday, walking up to Air Force One. What is happening in D.C.? Is there something happening outside of that you're saying? Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. You got to remember that D.C. is a foreign territory. It's not part of the United States. It's a foreign district, and that's where the United States Inc. was operating out of. USA Inc. is now defunct. The White House has been locked down. The lights are off. It's vacant. When you go to the U.S. Treasury website, you'll see that almost every office is vacant. There's only like 2 undersecretaries, assistant secretaries that are even in the office. We called the Supreme Court not long ago, and a military personnel answered the phone and said the court is closed. Okay, well, the court's never closed unless the corporation is dead. So we can see that the corporation is dead. That whoever is playing Biden is not in D.C. Trust me, I know. I've got people in D.C. The White House is vacant. So all of that stuff is just being allowed to go on to expose everything so that the people can see what's going on. The people have to know the truth. We can't go back to everybody being sovereign whenever half the people, when they've got everybody divided and ready to go to civil war, especially when it's all over lies. We're all being lied to. There's nothing that any of us have been told that are true. Life is not what we believe it is. And so, yeah, there's a great deal of things going on. I communicate with the Joint Chiefs, so I know that that there are a great deal of things going on. Trump is still in Air Force One. Biden doesn't fly on Air Force One. He doesn't have access to the Pentagon. He's not in the White House. It's all just a show to get people to see what's going on. And secondly, to get the people off their ass. The people are the sovereigns. We can no longer sit on the couch and act and still be a sovereign. We expect the government or the military to do our bidding, but yet we want to maintain our sovereign authority. It doesn't work that way. The military operates on our orders. They fulfill our will, and we are not expressing our will. And that's the thing. The people must stand up. But yeah, I'm in communication with a lot of them, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're getting ready to start a huge campaign to awaken the people and let them know, here's what's going on. You have to begin to exercise your sovereign authority. And here's how you begin. People have to understand what government is and what sovereign authority is, and that sovereign doesn't mean everybody's a dictator. Nobody's a dictator. You're a dictator over your own physical body, and that's it. So there has to be a complete re-education. The people, what is sovereign authority? How do you express that? How do you exercise that? Because if we don't exercise it, we're going to accept what we get. And I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to take all of these codes and statutes are part of the occupational force. They were part of the 1933 occupation, where all these codes and statutes are a tax on the mortgage that became that the national banking emergency became. So all these codes and statutes go to the Federal Reserve banks. Well, if the national banking emergency has been terminated, and it has, then all these codes and statutes are now void too. But if we sit and when we obey those and we still allow them to, then we're consenting to them, a defunct corporation continuing to manage our world. And so people must stand up and see what is saying. We're starting a new campaign to challenge everything, everybody, everything. We have documents that we're putting out to assist people and education, assist people to challenge every single court case, every traffic violation, and very simple. We created a legal process that is so simple, everybody can learn it and everybody can use it. And we got a process that ties into our court case in New York, where you can take and you can challenge the jurisdiction of any court or any government agency anywhere in the United States, and if they don't come clean, you can file those court charges of barratry straight into our court case in New York. So we are beginning a huge campaign, and we're getting ready to go on the road this spring to push this idea that challenge everything. So I would encourage people to come to theprivatepeople.com, where we start out with the very, very basics. And then you can move on into One Global Estate, where we have a series of a dozen different websites that we use there in the private to where we provide rules of or tools of empowerment for you. And we give you all kinds of educational tools, real physical tools of empowerment to help you in to know what sovereign authority is and to peacefully and rightfully exercise that sovereign authority. So the privatepeople.com and or oneglobalestate.com.
Let me ask you a question, James. I use a phrase commonly when I speak to people about the financial system, and let me ask you this question. We've got the International Monetary Fund. I believe that's based in D.C., but then we've got the bank there in Basel, Switzerland, International Settlements. Do all roads lead to the system that's been inherently received through Rome, or all roads leading to Switzerland in a financial sense?
It's all Rome. Yeah, it's all Rome. Absolutely. Yep.
All roads lead. Go ahead.
Yeah, all roads lead to Rome.
And are they leading to the Vatican?
Absolutely. Yes.
Still today in 2021, what is the
No, but it only points to Vatican today. That's the thing. It only points there. That is the part of the legal or the system that is being dismantled. I can tell you, I assisted in executing and processing the documents that terminate the entire fiat system globally, from the IMF, the World Bank, the Federal Reserve Bank, and over 200 central banks. I was there whenever they executed the documents to terminate the entire system and to turn all the gold and all the assets over to the quantum financial system. So this was all done last month. It's a done deal, and it's in the process now. So all that system, although yes, it still points to the Vatican, that is the system that is being destroyed. It is now defunct.
And so where does that quantum system, where does that reside geographically?
I don't know that, but it is geographic. It's universal. It's in the sky.
Interesting, James. How does the
and that is the purpose for the Space Force.
The Space
to protect the banking system.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. We just finished with Alana Freeland. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that's something that we did discuss as well. Talk about for a minute for listeners, because this may be jumping a little bit for a lot of listeners. Talk a little bit about maritime law versus natural law, and then how the Postmaster General equates into this.
Well, yeah. I mean, the entire world, like I say, is a trust. It all is a trust based on the Bible. When you break down that trust, it all starts with the head trustee or the head occupant is the Vatican. Then under that, number 2 was the Postmaster General of or the Universal Postal Union, the Postal Union. every sovereign nation, the first thing requirement for a sovereign nation is to have a postmaster. So that's what they did. They created a UPU, the Universal Postal Union was number 2 of the trustee list. And then under that, each sovereign nation had a postmaster, was level 3 of the trustees, and they had the authority under that for the government below that. So that's the hierarchy of the trust. And you'll see in your local community, you'll see the township trustee, the county trustee, there's all these trustees from, that control the land, and they go all the way up. And it's a tier of them, all the way from once we get to the Postmaster General of the United States, it goes from there. That's level 4 or level 3. And then the UPU is level 2, and then it goes to the Vatican.
But that's all been
though the Vatican no longer holds the keys either. So I mean that is all a dying system, and it's been in the process for 10 years of terminating that. The key was taken from them 10 years ago, whenever Benedict stepped down. When Benedict stepped down, he took the name of Pope Emeritus. Well, emeritus means having fully fulfilled his duty as successor to Peter. Well, there's only 2 ways to do that. One is to die, and we know that, we have evidence to suggest he's still alive and well. We don't know if it's a clone or not, but he suggested he's alive. So the only other option is to return to Peter. So he was stating to the world when he stepped down and took that name that Peter had returned. And so he had passed on the key. And that was the termination. You'll see, there's different prophecies that say that Benedict was going to be the final pope, or there would be one pope beyond him, and that would be Peter the Roman. Well, we know that that when what's his name that's in there now, he refused to take the papal palace. He refused to wear the papal shoes. And in fact, he said he was the Bishop of Rome. He was not the Pope. So we knew he was not the real Pope. He was not the successor to Peter. He was just an interloper that was coming in and still maintaining this whole fallacy, even without authority. And so, so he has taken and maintained all this fallacy or this illusion for 10 years now, while everybody in the background has been taking this power and authority away from him. You can see whenever Trump it was back in maybe 17 or 18, when he went to visit the Queen, and it didn't go so well for the Queen. And then from there he went to visit the Vatican. Well, that was in the process where he had the documents in hand to show that the Queen in the City of London, look, you no longer have any control over any of these assets. And when he went to Vatican, you no longer have any immunity. And what happened? The Vatican was always immune from everything, from prosecution. Why? Because they were the occupant. Okay, and the occupant is not subject to the laws of the occupation. So they were immune. Well, once the key was removed from them, now they no longer had that immunity. And you can see in the years after that they raided the Vatican Bank. They raided the vaults in the bottom of the Vatican lately, and they took 60 plane loads of valuables out of there. They've stripped them of trillions of dollars of assets, and all that because they no longer hold the keys. They're no longer the successor to Peter. So that whole infrastructure, that whole trust as it operated under that occupation, is now falling apart, and that's the chaos we're seeing today. So all this COVID and stuff is that occupational force trying to hold on and force the people to consent. And here they go, they're all consenting. And so as long as the people consent to they're being ruled over by them, then the military is really it has no other options. So that's where we are today.
What's the difference between the black pope and the white pope? And I want you to talk a little bit more about the COVID-19 and how that translates into this global reset. But what's the difference between those two popes?
Well, the two popes, that's the black and the white, the yin and the yang, the public and the private. Is pretty much what it is. The Black Pope is definitely has always been a Jesuit, and he pretty much runs the show in the background. The Pope Francis they are pretty much the figurehead. They have a lot of power and control, but they both operate on the other each their side of the camp. It's the Black Pope that's the one that does all the bribery and all the stuff, and controls the media and all that stuff.
And how does this COVID-19 relate to the Great Reset that Klaus Schwab is talking about? And then what can people do? What can people do? Obviously not consent, but what do you recommend? Those are two different questions, but start with the Great Reset. What does that mean to you?
Well, this is there's two different Great Resets. There's what they had in mind for us, and there's what we have in mind for us. There's two different things there, where there was two different quantum financial systems as well. There was their version of it, and there was our version of it. This has been a battle between the light and the dark, for sure, absolutely. So that they've mirrored each other's products, if you will. And so the Great Reset for them was to take everybody's debt and wipe it out, and they get all the property. Well, that was their version of it, and we all became absolute slaves. Well, our version of it is, and this is the one that's actually happening now, is that it's all been redeemed. All of the Federal Reserve, all the Federal Reserve banks and the central banks, where they had thought, where their plan was to go bankrupt, and they can now maintain all of the assets, the ill-gotten gains. The way it was done, they don't get to maintain anything. All those ill-gotten gains are all getting seized back and brought back and given back to the people. And that is the reset. All of these fictions and all this stuff the ill-gotten gains, like I said, it's all being cashed in, and it's now being credited to the people. So it's two different systems. It was the same name. They were going to reset everything to zero. Everybody's going to get, no debt. But they were going to, in their version, they were going to end up with all power and control, with absolute control all over the property, and us being the property as well. On the other side is they have absolutely no control. They lose everything. And the reset is the reset of the value and the authority and the power back to the people. And so ultimately, that's what's going on. That's what's happening. And like I said, I know that's true because I processed and delivered the papers to the Joint Chiefs personally. So we won. That is the reset that's happening. So what that's going to be, and we're going to see it very shortly. I think there's a chance we're going to see it before the end of the month. There will be the reset, and that will be the reset. Technically, the exchange is all about resetting the world to an even playing field. That's what Trump was doing with all these trade sanctions and stuff. Was he was beginning to balance the trade board in advance of this reset. And so now they'll take, and after that, now they'll rebalance. It's all, everything is just being rebalanced so that we've all working on the same playing field, that nobody's got some leverage above the other. Everything's going to be set back to zero, and the people end up with the property back and their sovereign authority back. That is the biblical thing here. I mean, Trump has been saying, they've been saying for years, this is biblical. Well, I'm telling you, this is biblical, because this is the termination or the fulfillment of Christ's new covenant, and which terminates the law form for the age of Pisces, and we're now starting into the new age of Aquarius, which requires a new trust, a new set of rules, and a new game board. And that's what's being happening right now, is we're shifting the rules and everything. So,
and what's the name of that new covenant?
Well, I don't know that it has a name. They're calling it Celestial Trust. I call it Divine Estate Trust.
James, what does how do the vaccinations does that play into this at all?
Well, absolutely. That is all their see, like again, it falls into the COVID thing. As long as they can get the people to consent, to be compliant, then they're consenting and they can continue this rule over them. Until the people stand up and buck, the military has no option, no way to go in. So that's what this is all about. It's about dumbing down the people. We're creating fear and mistrust. Hell, you can't, they got everybody scared to their own family, for God's sakes, wearing masks in the car with their wives and husbands, going to, if they go to a Christmas or a family dinner, they only half the family can come and they got to wear a mask. Well, that's craziness. They're creating this division and fear, so nobody knows who to believe, who to trust, what to believe or what to trust. And so what is left? Let's listen to the government, because they wouldn't trick us. And that's what they want. They want us compliant, because compliance means consent. And so that's what this is all about, fear and compliance.
So if people are consenting to receiving the vaccination, they receive the vaccination, does that make them part of one system over another, those that are not being vaccinated?
Well, no, I don't know that it does, unless the vaccine really has something in it that changes your DNA. If it makes you non-human, then I would say yes, it would make you in a different subcategory for sure. We don't know what it does. And there again, we're seeing all these different experts that've got, expert opinions from A to Z. So you don't know what to believe. So in my opinion, I ain't taking the damn thing. If you give it to me, it's going to be in a corpse. I'm sovereign. This is my body.
Yeah, right.
I think that's what it's all about. It's about divide and conquer. Nobody knows what to believe. Okay, and they've got mothers against fathers, both believing two separate things. Well, it's tearing people apart, tearing families apart. And that's what they want, because divide and conquer is their only way. If we stand together and say, hell no, we're not taking that crap, and we're not wearing these friggin' masks, what are they going to do? What are they going to do?
Yeah, talk about a little more about, James, about your service and how people can reclaim their own sovereignty or realize their own sovereignty.
Yeah, well, what we do, we create the documents for you and we walk you through the acceptance and surrender process. We do all the documents for you because, to be honest, you don't need the learning curve. We want you to study the documents and know what you're doing. So we create the documents for you. We tell you and give you instructions of where to mail them and everything that makes you an internationally protected person. Then we provide you all kinds of tools of empowerment, from legal documents to flyers and informational stuff. We are constantly doing court cases and seminars and stuff. So we offer all those tools of empowerment to assist you in exercising your sovereign authority. And I'm telling you, the biggest part of it is knowledge, is education. And what we teach you, challenge everything. Question everybody and everything, including us. We want you to prove it for yourself. And if that, in doing that, if you prove me wrong, good on you. Because we're going to learn from something like that and we're going to grow. No, I want to challenge everything. And I think that's what we need to do, because we're to a point nobody knows what to believe. I want evidence. Give me evidence. You say this, show me. I'm from Missouri. And that's what we're trying to teach people how to do it. We're giving you the documents, we're giving you the tools to challenge everything so that you can now make an educated decision for yourself on what is right and wrong, what is true and what is not. Because ultimately, that's what they want us to do. They want you have to come to them, or we have to come to them to see what we're supposed to believe on something. We need to think for ourselves. We need to learn to think and analyze for ourselves, and then from there decide what is right. And you know what? It doesn't have to be the same thing for me and you. It's not like it's one right fits everybody. It's we all have our own perspective, but it's all about being free, exercising your sovereign authority, harming nobody, and having nobody trespassing on you and your rights. It's not that difficult. You know, it's really quite a simple process, a pretty simple life that we're seeking. Just don't trespass on my property and my rights. You know, leave me alone.
James,
We offer you all those tools of empowerment.
You mentioned something about Trump and Biden. Mainstream media, of course, many of us Americans are questioning the validity of the information we're receiving off of those outlets. But we're being told anyway that Joe Biden is the president elect. Kamala Harris, the first female VP. Are you saying that that's incorrect?
No, no, absolutely they are. They're the president and the vice president of a defunct corporation that has absolutely no authority. You know, yes, they are. They can have it. Just don't trespass on our fucking property.
Okay, so James, how tell listeners why that corporation that they are president of? How do you know that that's defunct?
Because I helped process the documents to make that happen. I have the documents in my possession. Yeah, and that kills a whole bunch of things. That terminates all this. The public trust in 1933, the USA Corporation. Yeah, all of that. I've got those documents.
Are those available for view on a website? How can listeners see that stuff?
Yeah, for the most part they are. Yeah, on One Global Estate. And the reason why we do have a membership fee is because it is a membership. There's a lot of this stuff that cannot be shown in the public, but we can share it in the private. And when you come and you become a member, it's only $2 for a lifetime membership. But that ties you into a private contract that says, you know, what's private's private, and you won't take our documents out and publish them somewhere else.
So I think your words are poetry for well, we know to be 75 million Americans have voted for Trump. I think a lot of those people are looking for. He spoke at a CPAC meeting a couple weeks ago. There's talk of him rerunning. But why isn't the conversation, James? Why isn't the conversation of this corporation being defunct? I think a lot of Americans don't even realize that the United States is it comes to light in actually many corporations. There are many corporations that bear the name United States of America. That one that you were speaking of that's tied to the federal government in D.C., you were saying is defunct. Why are you saying that that's going to, in the next few weeks, a couple months, that will become topic of discussion for most Americans?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, in fact, we're working on a DC citizenship to turn via our statehood for DC.
Yeah.
We're working on a program with some people in DC to capture that foreign territory from the defunct corporation and make it not the 51st state of the corporation, but of another republic of the Union. So that's what we're working on right now in DC. We see the same thing happening. I see every state's going to revert back to a republic. We're going to be a series of republics, and the United States is military is going to be operating the Space Force, and they'll be responsible for the overall security of the planet and the banking system. And we will be a conglomerate of global republics.
Wow. Okay, you've just said some very compelling things there that I think will resonate with a lot of people. And where does the United Nations, for instance, thread into that?
They're part of the old system. They are part of the old system. They're going to die with the rest of it. They are either die or they're morphed. There's already another organization. I can't remember the name of it. There's like 168 different countries have already approved it and are getting ready to fire it up. It's a replacement for the United Nations. It's going to be in the New World type mentality. So that's already in place. There's only there's 168, 170 countries already signed on board, and they're already meeting and stuff as we speak. So there's a lot of this stuff is so far along. There's new banking systems, new banking currencies and stuff that's ready to come online here very shortly as well. Just so much technology, and everything has been coming together for the last 10 or 15 years, and it's like everything is in being staged. It's almost akin to all the horses are in the gate now, and we're ready with all this technology and all these funds, and everything is about to be broke loose, and I'm telling you, we're going to have a whole new world. There's going to be a lot of people. There's going to be a period of transition, because there's so much of this stuff will be exposed over the next 2 to 3 years that will just rock people to the core. You know, there's still a great deal of people, I mean, a huge percentage of the people that are really asleep. And many of them won't make the trip, you know, in this incarnation. And that's okay too. You know, those people will choose, you know, it's just too difficult of a change. They'll come, they will go through another incarnation and come back and visit our changes that way. But there's a great deal of us that will, and there's a whole lot of waking up to do. And we have to remember, we're all in this together, you know. We have an obligation to wake up our brothers and our sisters, you know. So I think that's, you know, we got that coming, and we're going to be some time here of some very, very rude awakening. Some people are going to need a lot of help. So.
Wow, James, I thank you for joining the program, Discussions of Truth. It's been an honor. And some parting words for listeners. Some parting words for listeners.
There's a lot of hope. I tell you, it's the most positive time in my life. There's been years in my life. Like I said, I've been at this for 45 years. I couldn't think why am I doing this? Because there was like no hope. And here today, I stand, and there's all this chaos and insanity, and I see all the hope in the world. You know, I see, because I'm in the background. I'm involved in it, and I see it, and it's happening. And they can't stop it. They can't stop it. So if you want more, come see us at theprivatepeople.com and or oneglobalestate.com. Thank you. Keep the faith. It's we're making this happen.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, James. James Thomas, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, James. Looking forward to reaching out to you in the short future.
All right. Thank you, Ian. Appreciate it.